The morning bell rang, echoing down the halls of Ridgeview Middle School. Students shuffled in, chatting about weekend plans and science tests. But when Eli walked through the front doors, everything stopped. His coat hung off his thin frame like it belonged to someone 3 sizes bigger. One of his shoes was held together with duct tape, and the other had a hole in the toe. His jeans were faded, his shirt untucked, and his backpack looked more like a crumpled grocery bag. Whispers began immediately. "Is that the new kid? Where'd he come from, a time machine? Looks like he lives in a dumpster." Eli said nothing. His eyes, deep, sharp, and strangely calm, swept the hall. He didn't look scared. He didn't look embarrassed. He just looked focused, like he was watching something the rest of them couldn't see. "Nice backpack," Darren, the class clown, called out as he passed by, high-fiving his friends. "Did your grandma knit that?" A few students laughed. Eli didn't react. He walked past them all, quiet as a shadow until he reached his locker. It was stuck. Kids snickered as he yanked on it. Still no response from Eli. He crouched down and fiddled with something near the hinge. Click. It opened. Weird. "Did he just pick the lock?" one kid whispered. Homeroom began. As Eli stepped inside, the teacher paused mid-sentence. The class turned to stare. He walked slowly to the only empty desk in the back and sat down, folding his hands. The teacher cleared her throat. "Class, this is Eli. He's new. Let's, give him a warm welcome." But Eli wasn't listening. His eyes were already on the whiteboard, scanning the math problems written there, solving them one by one in his mind. The gym echoed with the sounds of sneakers squeaking and whistles blowing. Coach Morgan barked out drills while students groaned their way through push-ups and sprints. Eli, still wearing his patched-up sneakers and long-sleeve shirt, stood off to the side. Coach hadn't noticed he didn't have proper gym clothes yet. "Eli, you plan on playing in your Sunday best?" Coach finally yelled across the court. The class laughed. Eli slowly shook his head. "I don't have any gym clothes," he said softly. "Borrow something from the lost and found," Coach replied, already blowing his whistle again. Eli disappeared into the locker room. A few minutes later, Darren and his crew slipped inside too. "Look who's here," Darren sneered, spotting Eli at the corner locker. "Our little fashion disaster." Eli didn't answer. He was carefully folding his clothes, placing them on the bench. "Careful," Darren mocked. "Wouldn't want those dollar store threads to get wrinkled." Then, without warning, Darren grabbed Eli's clothes and tossed them across the room. One of his friends snatched the pants and stuffed them into a nearby toilet. Everyone laughed, except Eli. He stepped forward, silent. Water dripped from the edges of his soaked jeans. The room grew quiet. Eli stared directly into Darren's eyes. "Your dad's name is Marcus," Eli said quietly. "He works at the courthouse. Tuesdays are his late nights." Darren froze. Eli took a slow step closer. "He drives a gray truck with a dent on the back left bumper. He was at Ridgeview Cafe last night." "Not with your mom." The laughter died instantly. Darren's face turned pale. How do you know that?" he stammered. But Eli didn't answer. He simply picked up his shirt from the bench, brushed off the dust, and walked away, leaving the RB. Math class at Ridgeview was usually slow and predictable. Mrs. Klein was known for her strict rules and dry voice that could put even the most hyper kid to sleep. But today would be different. Eli sat in the back again. His old backpack slumped beside him like a sleeping dog. He hadn't raised his hand once all week. Some kids said he didn't even talk unless someone spoke to him first. Mrs. Klein turned to the board and began scribbling a long equation. Numbers, variables, exponents. It stretched across the whiteboard like a snake. "All right, class," she said, setting down her marker. "Anyone want to take a stab at this? It's a high school level problem, so don't worry if you can't solve it." Of course, no hands went up. Not even the straight A kids dared. Then, as if he hadn't even thought about it, Eli slowly stood. The room tilted with curiosity. Mrs. Klein raised an eyebrow. "Yes, Eli." He walked to the front with no paper, no pencil, just calm, steady steps. He looked at the equation for a moment, then picked up the marker. His hands moved fast, but not sloppy. Every number was placed with precision. His solution didn't just look right, it was right. By the time he drew a box around his final answer, the entire class was frozen in shock. Mrs. Klein stared at the board, then at Eli, then back at the board. "That's correct," she said, stunned. Someone whispered, "No way!" Darren, sitting 2 rows over, narrowed his eyes. Eli turned around, handed the marker back, and walked silently to his seat. "Did you memorize that problem?" Mrs. Klein asked, still trying to catch up. "No," Eli said quietly. "I just saw the pattern." The class didn't know what was scarier, his answer, or the way he said it, like it was no big deal. The first note showed up on a Monday morning. Darren opened his locker and froze. Taped to the inside door was a small white envelope. No name, no handwriting, just one word typed in all capital letters: truth. He looked around. No one was watching. He peeled it open. Inside was a piece of paper with strange symbols, like some kind of code. But under the symbols was a message typed clearly: "Your secret isn't as buried as you think." His face turned white. That afternoon, word spread like wildfire. 2 more students, popular kids, found notes just like Darren's. Each one had a different message, but the same feel. Someone knew things about them, things they hadn't told anyone. By Thursday, 7 students had gotten the strange envelopes. One girl burst into tears after opening hers. Another boy tried to deny everything, until the note's warning came true later that day. The school was on edge. The principal called an emergency assembly. "This is not a game," she said sternly. "Whoever is behind these anonymous threats will face serious consequences. We are working to identify the source." Students whispered in the halls. Rumors flew. Some said it was a hacker. Others thought it was a teacher. A few began to point fingers at Eli. "He's weird," one kid whispered. "He never talks to anyone, but he watches everyone. He solved that impossible math thing. What else can he do?" In computer class, Darren glanced over at Eli's screen. Lines of code, fast, clean, and impossible to understand. Eli noticed Darren looking and tilted his head slightly. Then, ever so faintly, he smiled. Just once. Darren jerked back in his chair like he'd seen a ghost. No one could prove it. No one could stop it. But everyone was thinking the same thing. Eli knew too much. The chess club met every Wednesday after school in room 204. Most students joined for the snacks and extra credit. A few came for the actual game, but no one expected him to show up. Eli stood in the doorway, eyes scanning the boards already in play. His expression was unreadable. He didn't say a word. "Can we help you?" asked Mr. Watkins, the club's sponsor and math teacher. His voice wasn't unkind, just surprised. "I'd like to play," Eli said simply. A few students chuckled under their breath. "You sure, dude?" one boy asked. "This isn't checkers." Mr. Watkins waved toward the back. "We have an open board. You can start there." Eli sat across from Trevor Lynn, the school's 3-time chess champ and regional finalist. Trevor smirked. "Don't feel bad when you lose. I'll go easy." Eli didn't answer. He just moved his first pawn with perfect precision. Trevor responded, quick and confident. But then, Eli's next move, then the one after, then another. Trevor's smirk faded. 10 minutes in, the room had gone silent. Other students stopped their own games to watch. Mr. Watkins leaned over, his arms crossed, eyebrows raised. By move 20, Trevor was sweating. By move 25, Eli whispered, "Check." By move 28, "Checkmate." Trevor sat frozen. Mr. Watkins stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. "You've played before?" Eli looked up at him. "Only in my head." A ripple of gasps swept through the room. "Would you like to play me?" Mr. Watkins asked, half smiling. Eli stood, nodding once. "It's not about the pieces," he said, voice low. "It's about the player." He sat across from the teacher. 15 minutes later, Mr. Watkins shook his head and tipped over his king. No one laughed at Eli after that. They were too busy trying to figure out who he really was. It was just after lunch when the front office phone rang. Mrs. Delgado, the school secretary, picked it up. "Ridgeview Middle, how may I help you?" Her eyes narrowed as she listened. "Yes, he's a student here. May I ask who's calling?" There was a pause. Then her expression changed, confused, almost nervous. You're already in the parking lot. I see. She stood quickly and walked into Principal Jensen's office. 10 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up outside the school. A man in a dark gray suit and sunglasses stepped out, holding a briefcase and moving with quiet authority. His shoes clicked softly against the tile as he entered the building. He wasn't smiling. Students peered through the office window as he walked past. "Who is that guy?" someone whispered. "FBI?" The man didn't speak to anyone until he reached Principal Jensen. He handed her a sealed envelope and pointed to a single name typed on the front, Eli Carter. "He's not in trouble," the man said in a deep voice, "but he's unusual." Principal Jensen opened the envelope, her face tightening with every line she read. "Is this a joke?" she asked. The man gave no answer. He simply handed her a second envelope marked "Strictly Confidential," then turned and left the way he came, disappearing as quickly as he'd arrived. Word spread like lightning. Some guy in a suit came for Eli. Maybe he's in witness protection, or a robot, or a spy. But Eli said nothing. He sat at his desk, flipping slowly through a history book as if none of it mattered. That afternoon, Mrs. Delgado swore she saw Principal Jensen watching Eli through her office blinds. He wasn't just different anymore. He was something else entirely. Friday morning began like any other, until every computer screen in Ridgeview Middle School went black. In the library, screens flickered. In classrooms, smartboards shut off. In the front office, the attendance system crashed. Then one by one, the screens lit back up. Not with the usual login page, but with a message. "Truth is a code. You should have been nicer." Teachers scrambled. Students whispered. The principal rushed into the IT room, barking orders. "Shut it down! Unplug everything!" But it was too late. The message had already spread. By third period, the entire school was buzzing. "It has to be Eli," Darren said loudly at lunch, standing on a bench to rally attention. "You've seen him. He's always coding. He never talks. He's creepy and smart. He's messing with all of us." Some students nodded, others weren't so sure. Still, a small crowd began forming around Eli's lunch table. He didn't look up. He was drawing something on a napkin. Circles, arrows, symbols. "Hey, freak!" Darren shouted. "What's your next move? Gonna hack our phones now?" Eli calmly folded the napkin and stood up. "No," he said. "But I know who did." Darren laughed. "Yeah, right." Eli reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. "This has the keystroke logs from the library computers. I installed a tracker after the first code note appeared." He walked past the stunned crowd and handed the drive to Mrs. Klein, who had just entered the cafeteria. "You'll find the culprit used the lab at 3:42 p.m. yesterday." Station 9, Mrs. Klein stared at him. How did you? "Patterns," Eli said quietly. "People repeat them." An hour later, the real culprit was caught. It wasn't Eli. It was Trevor Lynn, trying to get back at Eli after the chess match. The principal offered Eli an apology. He didn't take it. He just whispered, "This is only the beginning." It was the middle of a quiet afternoon when Eli slipped into the school's archives. The hallway was empty, the bell for the next class hadn't rung yet, and everyone else was still wrapped up in their routine. Except for Eli. He didn't walk like a regular student. He moved with purpose, avoiding the usual crowds, heading toward a place few had ever seen. The door to the archives was tucked away in the back of the school, behind the old janitor's closet. Most students didn't even know it existed, but Eli did. He crouched in front of the heavy door and pulled a key from his pocket. Click. The door creaked open. Inside, the air smelled stale and dusty. Rows of old files, yellowing papers, and forgotten school records filled the space. But Eli wasn't interested in any of that. His eyes scanned the room, focused on one specific shelf. He pulled out a thick binder labeled Project Ridgeview: Confidential. The cover was worn, the ink smudged, but Eli didn't hesitate. He flipped it open to a page marked with a red stamp. Top secret. As he read, his eyes narrowed. The file detailed strange experiments conducted at Ridgeview Middle School years ago, psychological tests, behavior modification, and a cryptic mention of highly gifted students placed under observation. Eli froze. Then he heard the sound of footsteps. Someone was coming. Quickly, he shoved the binder back onto the shelf and darted behind a stack of crates. He held his breath, praying no one saw him. He wasn't supposed to be here, but the information, it was too important, too dangerous. The footsteps grew louder. The door creaked again as someone entered. Eli's heart raced. Was it a teacher? Was it someone looking for him? A shadow passed by the crates, and Eli barely dared to move. Then, without warning, the lights flickered and went out. The assembly began like any other. Students filed into the auditorium, half distracted by their phones, the chatter rising in a dull murmur. The teachers filed in behind them, all wearing their usual forced smiles, trying to maintain some semblance of control. But this assembly wasn't like the others. Principal Jensen stood at the front, her face pale. There was something different in her eyes, something unsettled. She cleared her throat, waiting for the noise to die down. It didn't. She tapped the microphone and finally a hush fell over the room. "Students of Ridgeview Middle," she began, her voice steady but strained. "We've had some unusual events occur recently, events that have caused distress for some of you and concern for us. It's time to address them." A murmur swept through the crowd. Eli sat in the back, his usual calm demeanor masking the storm raging inside him. He had known this day was coming. He had been waiting for it. The truth was about to be revealed, and no one would leave unchanged. This school, Principal Jensen paused, glancing at the stage curtains as if she was waiting for someone to step forward. This school was not built on just education, it was built on something else. A chill ran through the auditorium. The lights dimmed. On the giant screen behind Principal Jensen, an image flickered to life. An old photograph of Ridgeview Middle from years ago. A black and white image of the original school building. The one that had burned down before the new one was built. But there was something in the background. Something unexpected. Children, hundreds of them, all standing in front of the building with strange expressions on their faces. Unblinking, like they were being controlled. Ridgeview Middle was the site of a secret government project, Jensen continued, her voice cracking slightly. A project aimed at studying gifted children with extraordinary cognitive abilities. You are all part of it. The room went deathly silent. "Eli," Jensen said, locking eyes with him across the auditorium. "You were right. We tried to erase the past, but it's never truly gone." Eli's heart pounded. It was happening. Everything he had suspected, everything he had known was coming to light. The truth was out. The auditorium was still. Not a single person moved. The weight of Principal Jensen's words hung heavy in the air. Eli's mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle he'd been collecting for weeks finally falling into place. But now that he knew the truth, the real challenge began. "Eli," Jensen said again, her voice softer now, but still laced with urgency. "We tried to control the children we chose for this program. You were one of them, but we lost track of you after the fire, after the cover-up. We thought you were gone." Eli stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His eyes didn't leave hers. "I wasn't gone," Eli said calmly. "I just knew too much." A ripple of gas passed through the crowd. He didn't care. The answers he'd found in the archives were clearer now, more horrifying. He wasn't just part of some failed experiment. He was a survivor, someone who had been hidden away in plain sight, someone they thought had been erased from their records. "You thought you could erase it all," Eli continued. "You tried to bury me, but I'm still here." Jensen's face tightened. "Eli, we didn't want this to happen. We didn't know you'd—" "I didn't want it either," Eli interrupted. "But you left me with no choice." The room fell into an eerie silence as Eli walked toward the center stage, his every step echoing like a drumbeat. "You were wrong about me," he said to the students, his voice steady but filled with quiet power. "You thought I was the one pulling the strings, hacking the system, but I wasn't. I've been trying to stop it, all of it." Principal Jensen took a hesitant step forward. "What are you saying, Eli?" Eli took a deep breath, then locked eyes with her. "I'm giving you one last choice. You can either help me expose the rest of it, or you can stay silent and let this school repeat its mistakes. What's it going to be?" Jensen stood still, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. The audience waited in tense anticipation. After what seemed like an eternity, Jensen spoke. "I'll help you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll help you stop it." Eli nodded once, then turned to face the rest of the school. The choice had been made. The final battle was just beginning.